Sony has been releasing new flagship phones every 6 months, faster than any other company in the industry, but somehow, despite, or maybe because of this busy schedule, it has fallen a bit out of the big picture, and its newest phones hardly get the attention and hype that comes with a new iPhone or Samsung Galaxy. The new Sony Xperia XZ3 flagship does not change the aggressive launch schedule. It comes right on time, about half a year after the Xperia XZ2. But it changes something else as it marks a big, first, moment for Sony and pushes the boundaries of what you expect in a Sony phone. The XZ3 is the first Sony phone with an OLED screen, and it pleases both eyes and ears with HDR support and loud and clear dual front speakers. But is this enough to win people over from their other phone habits and have them switch to a Sony phone? We have used the Xperia XZ3 for more than a week, and we think we have the answer. The XZ3 features an elegant, tall and narrow body with curves in all the right places to make it a beauty to look at and a comfortable phone to hold in your hand. Admire it from afar, though, as the glass body easily gets stained with fingerprint smudges and you would need to wipe it clean often if you want to maintain that pristine clean look. One other practical disadvantage of the otherwise beautiful glass design here is that the phone easily slips off all sorts of surfaces and you have to be extra careful where you place it, or risk finding it has slipped and crashed to the ground. In the hand, the XZ3 feels substantial. It weighs 6.8 ounces, definitely not a lightweight phone, but it has that solid build quality that you associate with a premium product. The display is curved just slightly, but enough so that it seems to flow into the polished metal frame and form what feels like an almost singular surface. It's those sophisticated little details about the design that really impress. On the front, one in the earpiece and one right below the screen, are also two stellar loudspeakers, but more on that later. The back of the phone is also curved, almost pillow-shaped. Some amusingly call it the belly, and there is a single camera at the top part and a fingerprint scanner right about in the middle. It's an arrangement that Sony first introduced with the XZ2, and back then we noticed that it was a very weird position for a fingerprint scanner. You kind of have to reach way down with your index finger in an almost theatrical performance of hand gymnastics. You do get used to this weird place of the finger scanner after a while, but it never feels perfectly comfortable. Speaking of the fingerprint scanner, it does its job well, recognizing fingerprints accurately, without being the slowest or the fastest in the game. We were, however, disappointed to see there is no support for fingerprint gestures with such a tall phone as the XZ3. A swipe down on the fingerprint scanner to bring down notifications would have been a nice little convenience for us. On the bottom, you can find a USB-C port for charging. But don't go looking for a 3.5mm headphone jack. Sony has killed the good old audio jack but does provide a USB-C to 3.5mm adapter in the box with the XZ3. All the physical buttons are on the right side, a volume rocker at the top, a power key in the middle and a dedicated camera shutter button in the bottom. This arrangement is not very convenient. The volume keys are too up high and hard to reach, while the camera shutter key is too low and it's hard to use it when you hold the phone vertically. One more thing, the XZ3 is also IP68 water protected, which translates into a very practical ability to survive drops in water of up to 6 feet deep for as long as 30 minutes. So you don't need to fear taking the phone with you by the pool. In the past few years, OLED screens have slowly but surely carved their way as one of the most distinct features reserved for flagship phones and flagship phones only. OLED technology comes to replace LCD screens, as you probably already know, and has more dynamic, livelier colors, perfect blacks and higher contrast. Put simply, it's a more eye-catchy look. The specs break down as follows. It's a 6-inch OLED screen here with a Quad HD Plus, 1440 by 2880 pixel resolution and a 2:1 aspect ratio. No notch, fairly minimal bezels, and as we've mentioned earlier, the screen is slightly curved towards the edges, not unlike Samsung phones. The XZ3 is one of the first phones to come with the newest Android 9 Pie on board. While the interface follows the stock look in many ways, there are also some key interventions that Sony has made. Some good and some not so. Somewhat surprisingly, one of the highlights features of Android 9 Pie, the new navigation gesture interface, is completely missing on the XZ3. And Sony has confirmed that it has no plans to bring it at the moment. This leaves users with the 3 on-screen buttons for navigation, a solution that works, but also one that feels a bit behind the times. We have used gesture navigation on a number of Android phones and found that it is easy to get used to. Gestures result in a smoother experience, so we will miss not having this option. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 system chip powers the show here on the Xperia XZ3. No surprise, right? It's hard to think of a flagship phone in 2018 that uses a different chip. But this is well justified by the reliable and fast performance that the 845 delivers. On the XZ3, it's paired with 4GB of RAM, which is on the low side when compared to most other Android flagships, but is not something that you should be worried for regular daily use. The XZ3 is indeed fast and smooth, and runs without any major hiccups. You also have 64GB of onboard storage here with support for microSD cards to expand the memory. The 64 gigs that you do get on board, however, are less than the double or even quadruple amounts of storage that you get on similar classes of phones like the Note 9 and OnePlus 6. The Sony Xperia XZ3 is sold unlocked via Amazon in the US, and you might be concerned whether you would be able to use this phone on the major carriers. The XZ3 works on GSM carriers like AT&T and T-Mobile, but it does not support Verizon Wireless and Sprint. In terms of 4G LTE bands, you get proper bands for AT&T and T-Mobile. But certain features like Volta and VO Wi-Fi probably will not work. Globally, you should have no issues using the XZ3 on major international carriers' LTE networks. Sony has also clarified that the XZ3 does not support 5G connectivity. No phone does yet, but chances are that the first devices will start coming soon, so you might have been curious. In terms of other connectivity options, you also have dual-channel Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.0 and NFC support. Despite double, triple and more cameras on phones these days, Sony sticks with just one main camera on the XZ3, a 19-megapixel shooter with one of the largest camera sensors in the industry. A 1/2.3 sensor, bigger than what you get on the latest iPhone XS series and the Pixel series. With such a large sensor, it seems that Sony is forced to use a large field of view, and indeed the XZ3 features a very wide 25mm lens. Up front, you get a 13-megapixel shooter for your selfies. You also get a dedicated two-way camera shutter button that you can long press to quick start the camera app or use in the camera app to focus and take pictures. It's useful when you shoot pictures in horizontal orientation, but when you are trying to use it to quickly start the app while holding the phone vertically, it's way too low and out of reach. You do have one more way to quickly start the camera app, by just taking the phone out of your pocket and holding it horizontally. A little window appears and you can tap it to shoot a picture. You have two front-firing speakers on the Xperia XZ3 and the quality that comes out of them is very good. You don't quite have the boom and oomph that you get with the stereo speakers of say the iPhone X or XS, but while the bass and overall volume is not quite there, you can hear a lot of clarity and the mids and voices sound clear and crisp. While they might not be the very best loudspeakers around, we do appreciate their different focus on clarity rather than bass. Once again, let us remind you that the XZ3 does not have a headphone jack. It does come with a dongle, so you can still use wired headphones with it, or just go with USB-C buds or wireless cans. Along with the music and the games, Sony suggests you try out the dynamic vibration for a more immersive experience. The idea is that you get a responsive vibration from the phone and its huge vibration motor whenever the beat drops or a game enters a tense moment. That is in theory. We tried using this and it just felt awkward. The vibration often happens at random times, sometimes when there is no notable accent, and the whole vibration does more to distract rather than contribute in any meaningful way. We guess the idea is to do something like the vibration feedback you get from console controllers, but the effect is just not the same. Luckily, you can easily turn this feature off completely, or fine-tune the strength of the vibration if you like it. When it comes to call quality, we came away impressed with the XZ3. After some weird issues with a few top-end phones recently, the XZ3 delivers crisp and clear voices through its earpiece and the quality on the other end of the line is excellent as well. Good job, Sony. The XZ3 comes with a 3330 mAh battery inside. But will it be enough to handle the demands of a Quad HD Plus screen? We were as curious as you to find out, and that is why we tested and then again tested this phone. On our proprietary test, the XZ3 gets a decidedly mediocre score of just around 6 hours, noticeably less than most other 2018 flagships. We triple-checked to make sure we were doing everything right, but the results didn't change. Finally, the XZ3 also supports wireless charging with the Qi standard, so you can just leave it on a charger at a desk and not have to worry about cables. Summing it all up, the Xperia XZ3 is the most beautiful Sony phone to date, and not just in terms of design, but also for the outstanding OLED screen with its mesmerizing colors. The dual speakers also sound amazing, calls in the earpiece sound very clear, and overall, the XZ3 is a joy for all the senses. The devil, however, is in the details, as they say. And those details are the rather mediocre battery life of the XZ3. In an era of cool gesture interfaces for navigation, not having such an option available is another letdown. And the gimmicks like side sense do more to complicate rather than streamline the experience. All of this leaves us with mixed feelings about the XZ3. This is a phone that impresses the senses, yet lets you down a bit when it comes to pure functionality and features. And for $900, we expect a bit more than that.